Our lives are moving more and more into digital spaces, from our work meetings to the websites we use every day. But have you ever really stopped to think about how these worlds get built? And maybe more importantly, how do we make sure they actually work for us, for human beings? Well, today we're diving deep into that blueprint. We're going to look at two sides of the same coin. First, how you build a brand new digital world from the ground up, and second, how you test one that we already use to make it better. Okay, let's just start with something I think we all know a little too well. Zoom fatigue, right? That feeling of being totally drained after a day of video calls. I mean, how is it that you can spend hours and hours with people online and still feel kind of disconnected? It's because a lot of our current tools, well, they're just flat. They're like a pale imitation of real life. Yeah, we all recognize that grid of boxes on the left. That's been our reality for a while. But what we're moving toward is this on the right, a dynamic, three-dimensional space where we can interact in ways that feel way more natural. And look, this journey isn't just about flashy graphics. It's about rebuilding that fundamental sense of human connection that gets lost on a screen. All right, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to kick things off by talking about how you craft virtual presence. And then we'll look at the blueprint for collaboration. After that, we're going to pivot and look at the user experience test and see how data really drives design. And finally, we'll wrap it all up by looking at what a human-centered future looks like. Okay, let's jump right into part one. So imagine your job is to design a massive virtual conference. The biggest challenge you're going to face isn't the coding or the servers, it's the human element. It's figuring out how to make hundreds or thousands of people feel like they're truly there, together in the same space. And that brings us to this key concept, the absolute holy grail for designers, presence. It's that, almost magical feeling that you're not just staring at your monitor. It's the feeling that you are actually physically in a shared space with other real people. See, our brains are hardwired for things like spatial awareness and social cues, and presence is what happens when a digital world successfully tricks our senses into buying the illusion. It's what makes it all feel real. So, how on earth do you create it? Well, this slide nails one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. In real life, so much of what we communicate is nonverbal, right? A simple nod, a glance, the way you gesture with your hands. The Metaverse solution? It's creating these expressive avatars that can actually mirror those tiny movements. When your avatar can nod along while you're listening to someone, it sends this powerful social signal that makes the whole conversation feel so much more connected and genuine. And here's another genius solution. Think about being at a real party. As you walk toward a group of people, you start to hear their conversation get louder and clearer, right? That is exactly how proximity audio works. It's such a simple idea, but it's incredibly powerful for making social stuff feel natural. You can break off into little side chats or drift over to a bigger group just by moving your avatar. No more awkward everyone talks at once video calls. So we've figured out how to create the feeling of being there. That's a huge step. But what about the nuts and bolts, the logistics? I mean, how do you handle 1,000 people all trying to be in the same virtual space at the same time without everything just crashing? This is where the engineering blueprint comes in. Yeah, a virtual conference presents a ton of technical challenges. Take that first one, many simultaneous interactions. You just can't throw 1,000 fully rendered avatars in one big digital room. The system would melt. So the solution is something called zoned instances. Just think of it like having separate rooms or different islands for each presentation, all connected by one central hub. It makes the whole thing manageable. And to keep it all running smoothly, designers use tricks like level of detail, which basically means avatars and objects that are far away from you are drawn with less detail, which saves a ton of processing power. It's pretty clever. And this is a really crucial point. At the end of the day, it's not always the most high-tech, mind-blowing feature that makes a digital space successful. As this quote points out, it's often the small, thoughtful details. Things like that proximity audio we talked about, or just making sure the platform is accessible for people with disabilities. These things have a massive impact on whether people actually feel comfortable and want to come back. All right, so we've seen all the amazing thought that goes into building a brand new virtual world. But let's switch gears. What about the digital tools we're forced to use every day that just don't work? You know what I'm talking about, that clunky university website or that confusing portal you have to use for work. To make them better, we have to stop guessing what's wrong and start testing. And that's where a rigorous user experience test comes in. Now, this is not about just asking a few people, hey, do you like our website? No. This is a structured, almost scientific process. You start by planning out very clear goals.
Then you go out and recruit real users, not developers, real people. You sit them down and watch them try to complete tasks. Then you analyze all the data you collect, and finally, you deliver concrete, actionable recommendations. It's a method for turning all that user frustration into a clear roadmap for improvement.
And success here isn't just a vague feeling. It's measured with cold, hard data. We're talking about things like test success rate, what percentage of people could actually do what they were trying to do, time on task, how long did it take them to figure it out? And you even have things like a system usability scale, or SUS score, which is a standardized survey that gives you a single number to represent just how easy or difficult the system is to use. So you've run the tests. You've got this mountain of data, videos of people struggling, spreadsheets filled with completion times, survey scores. Now comes the most important part. You have to turn all that raw information into a clear plan for making the product better. This is where the real magic happens. A really solid evaluation never relies on just one thing. It uses a mix of methods to get the complete picture. You do usability testing, where you're literally watching people use the system. You send out surveys to get those hard numbers on satisfaction. You look at the analytics to see where people are actually clicking. And you even have experts do an inspection based on established design principles. Each one of these gives you a different, valuable piece of the puzzle. Okay, so you've got this long list of problems. How do you decide what to fix first? You can't do it all at once. That's where a tool like this severity matrix comes in. It's super simple, but so helpful. A problem that has a high impact, meaning it totally stops a user from doing something, and happens all the time, that's a critical issue. You fix that now. But a problem with low impact that rarely happens, that can probably wait. It's all about making smart, data-driven decisions. And if you ever wonder why any of this really matters, just read this quote. This is from a real student. It's honestly heartbreaking. It shows that a simple design flaw, like a submit button that's hard to find, isn't just a small annoyance. It can have devastating real-world consequences. It causes stress, frustration, and in this case, it made a student just give up. That's the human cost of bad design. But here's the good news. This process really, truly works. Look at this chart. It shows the task success rate for submitting an assignment before and after a UX evaluation led to some fixes. It went from a dismal 65% all the way up to 92%. That is a huge, measurable improvement that has a direct, positive impact on students' lives. Good design makes a difference. So we've traveled through two pretty different digital worlds today, right? On one hand, you have the exciting new frontier of building a metaverse, and on the other, you have the very practical, down-to-earth reality of fixing a university website. They seem like they're miles apart, but are they really? You know, when you boil it all down, it all comes back to one thing. Whether you are building a brave new world from scratch or you're just trying to improve an old one, the blueprint for success is exactly the same. It's a relentless, unwavering focus on the human being on the other side of that screen, understanding their needs, their goals, and their frustrations. That's the only way we're going to build digital worlds where we can all actually thrive. And that brings me to my final question for you. Think about your own digital life for a second. The apps on your phone, the websites you use for work or school, which one of them makes you just want to pull your hair out? What digital tool in your life is absolutely screaming for a rigorous user experience evaluation? Because once you start looking for it, you'll start to see the need for human-centered design everywhere.